Hello, and welcome to today's webinar on ESTCP funding opportunities. My name is Stephanie Lawless, and I will be moderating today's session. We will get started in a few moments. While we wait for others to log on, I would like to cover a few logistical items. Today's broadcast will be listen only. We will have a question and answer period at the end of the presentation. You may submit questions by using the chat box on the left-hand portion of the screen. You do not need to wait until the Q&A period to submit your questions. In fact, we encourage you to submit them in advance of that session. The phone lines will remain listen only throughout the presentation, so we will not be taking any questions verbally. We will not be able to answer questions about specific proposal ideas or technologies during this webinar. Please note that both the audio and the presentation of today's session will be archived on our solicitation webpage in case you would like to refer to them in the future. Today's speakers are Dr. Herb Nelson, the Director of ESTCP and Munitions Response Program Manager, and Dr. Andrea Leeson, the Deputy Director of ESTCP and Environmental Restoration Program Manager. Before I turn it over to Herb and Andrea, I would like to remind phone participants that this is a listen-only session, and to submit questions, please use the chat box in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. Herb?
Thank you very much, Stephanie. So welcome to you all. I see we have a good crowd here, so we're excited about that, and we hope that we will answer many of your questions throughout the presentation, and then, of course, answer them as specific questions later in the question and answer period. So many of you are quite familiar with the first 3 or 4 slides of material, but we have some new people that are new to our program, so to bring everybody to the same level of familiarity, we have a quick introduction to the programs. As you see on the slide you're looking at now, we are actually 2 programs managed out of the same office. On the left, we have the Strategic Environmental Research and Development Program, or SERDP, and on the right, we have the Environmental Security Technology Certification Program, which is the Demonstration Validation Program, which is the subject of today's talk. So we have several missions at ESTCP and SERDP. 2 of them are shown on this slide. One is to remediate in a cost-effective and effective manner contamination from past practices. You see some of the examples in the bullets below the photos. We obviously have a large UXO liability in the Department of Defense. Contamination from both traditional and emerging contaminants in groundwater, soils, and sediments. On the right-hand side is our mission to cut down the current pollution we're making currently, or hazardous materials we're working with currently, to avoid this problem in the future. And then the final issue is we're heavily invested in maintaining the sustainability of DoD's ranges, facilities, and operations. And you see an enormous number of examples on this slide, from marine mammals on the far left to the impacts of climate change for planners at DoD installations on the bottom right, and several other examples in between. So we manage ourselves. We have broken the program down into 5 program areas: weapon systems and platforms in the upper left, energy and water, which is not the subject of today's presentation, but will be of a call for proposals that is due out in early February, environmental restoration on the top right, munitions response, and then resource conservation and resiliency on the bottom left. So I've already said a little bit what ESTCP does, and this is how we do it. The point of ESTCP, it's a demonstration validation program, is to demonstrate innovative and cost-effective environmental, in this case, and installation energy in the later call, technologies. So these can capitalize on past investments that we have made in SERDP, can be transitioned out of other programs, but the main goal is the second small bullet, to transition technology out of the lab onto a real DoD site and prove out its performance. And through proving out its performance, the second large bullet tells us we really are promoting implementation. We work with regulators to gain acceptance. We get direct technology insertion into bases. So all of that, of course, leads us, we're focusing on the needs of the DoD community. So you see what we're looking for in technologies on this slide, and this is somewhat a repeat of the slide before. Obviously, we want technologies that are in that area where we think they work based on lab or on large-scale test data in the backyard, but we need to show that they can work on an actual DoD installation under real operational conditions. We may or may not be able to reliably cost them right now, so we need some real-world demonstration data to get a cost and performance idea of how that works, and or in the third bullet, bring the demonstration out, get a wider audience, help with implementation. If you have a technology which is already in use with well-established costing, all the things that are in the third bullet, then you are past the time for demonstration and validation, and it's time to just be implementing that technology at the sites. So we, of course, attempt to partner with stakeholders to test at DoD facilities. That's been a theme throughout this whole introduction. We always want to involve regulators to talk to developers and the end users. That helps with these direct transitions. I made a mention earlier of a cost and performance report. The baseline for that, we want to validate against existing technologies, and we want to have performance such that it satisfies regulatory and the user communities. And then, of course, we work on tech transfer, and the final task in many ESTCP projects is a tech transfer opportunity. So ESTCP is not really, boy, didn't it look cool, we took some nice pictures sort of program. We try to really make everything we do quantitative. So the steps are shown on this slide. We require a formal demonstration plan, which we send out for independent review, so everyone's on the same team of what we're measuring and what we're going to learn from those measurements before we start the demonstration. We then, of course, after that's been approved, we execute the technology demonstration, collecting data on both performance and cost, as I mentioned before. Then we have a final report, and then a brief cost and performance summary report mentioned in the bottom bullet of the third large bullet. And that's meant to be accessible to the users in the community, which leads us to the fourth bullet, which is support for transition. And that all flows from this cost and performance report in general, although a few projects have a specific task for some sort of guidance, regulatory training, something of the like. So here's how the process works. We have 3 calls. I presume that each of you have looked at the one appropriate for you. It's members of the Department of Defense. We have a broad agency announcement for universities and for-profit corporations, and then there's a call for federal organizations outside of the DoD. All 3 call for a pre-proposal, which will be submitted in April-ish. Somebody nodded, so it is April-ish. I'm sure those dates will be on a later slide. Once the pre-proposals are cut down, once we look at the pre-proposals, the point of the pre-proposal thing is, the pre-proposal requirement is we don't want to spin people up for something that's not really what we're looking for. So once the pre-proposals have been reviewed by the review panels, we will request full proposals from those that will apply. Yes, that's great. And then that would lead into an oral briefing also and the selection. So, of course, somebody has now told me that I was completely off the mark, and the pre-proposals are due March the 9th. So please do not wait till April and blame me. Oh, and there's the real answer. So that gives you clue number 1. Pay no attention to the man talking, only look at the numbers on the slide. So the proposals were released in early January. Of course, you saw that, which is why you're on this call. The pre-proposal is due in March the 9th. The program plays out such that we have the program assembled at the beginning of the next fiscal year. That's October. And then we can get projects going in the spring by the time we do contracting and transfer of money to federal organizations. So here is a quick little summary of the DoD call for proposals. I really went through this on the slide 2 ago. Obviously, we're looking for demonstration projects that fit the mission of ESTCP, which is the first large bullet. But to respond to this call for proposals, a DoD lead is required. The rest of the thing follows the same path, a short pre-proposal, so that you don't waste your time and we don't waste our time till we agree that we're working toward the same path, and then on to the selection. Broad agency announcement is slightly more targeted, the calls. You see in the top bullet, it's specific topic areas in the broad agency announcement. Same process though, short written pre-proposal. After a pre-proposal has been accepted and we request a full proposal, we will work to identify a DoD liaison for you to help with the site selection, to help with the context that you may need at an individual base for technology transition, and then you follow the same path. So here are the selection criteria, and I think they're pretty straightforward. They certainly flow from everything I've said in the slides till now. Obviously, you must be relevant to one of our calls for proposal. You may have a really great idea, but it's not the idea we're looking for, so we're not going there. So that becomes a pass-fail gate. Also, is the technology appropriate for demonstration? I said in a slide much earlier that if you're really past the need for demonstration, if it's a technology that is commercially viable, that we have good cost information for, good performance, that's too far along the development path for ESTCP. So those first two are pass-fail criteria, and then it's the usual technical merit, obviously the benefit that DoD can recover given the cost of the proposal, transition potential, and then small business participation if you're responding to the BAA. So here are some hallmarks that over the years have defined competitive proposals. And I hope none of you will find any surprises on this slide. You clearly have to address the topic area. You have to show to us that you understand what's going on. There needs to be laid out clearly what will be the questions in the demonstration, what data will be collected, and how will they allow us to get cost and performance data. So this is Science 101 type questions. We want to know that the technology, a successful technology, will provide a significant benefit, and it can be in two areas. It can either be reduced cost or improve performance at the same cost. And of course, best is if you're both of those. And then finally, this has to be technically sound. Obviously obey the laws of physics and be doable. And so with that, that's an introduction to the program and what we're looking for. I'm sure we will have some questions on that. I maybe was not at my most articulate today on all of those slides. So I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Andrea Leeson, who's going to walk you through some of the brief details of each of the calls for proposal.
Okay, thanks, Herb. So the first topics I'll talk about fall under our broad agency announcement as well as our call for proposals for federal organizations outside the DoD. And these topic areas are applicable to either one of these calls. So we have 7 topic areas under these 2 calls, each of which is applicable to a specific program area, except for our first one, which is the innovative technology transfer approaches. Now, under this one, what we're looking for are innovative technology transfer approaches for technologies that have been successfully demonstrated under ESTCP, or in certain cases, it could also be for technologies that have been developed under CERTIP, or in some cases, perhaps a body of knowledge from several projects under CERTIP that are ready for direct transfer. The proposals submitted under this topic area can really fall under a specific program area: environmental restoration, munitions response, weapons systems and platforms, or resource conservation and resiliency, or it can be a more general technology transfer approach that could be applicable to items or issues under any one of those program areas. What I did want to mention is that we are encouraging DoD organizations to take a look at this topic area and to please feel free to submit a technology transfer approach under the DoD topic if there is something that you have in mind. Also, I'd like to note that in FY15, we actually released a special solicitation on innovative technology transfer approaches. And if you go to the topic area, you'll see that there is a link that will take you to all of the projects we funded under that special solicitation, and from there, you can find project web pages that will describe to you what was funded before, and it's good to refer to that so that you can make sure you're not duplicating effort or that you can build on work that we've done before. Okay, these next couple of topic areas are under environmental restoration, and the first one here is long-term management of contaminated aquatic sediments. And what we're looking for here are innovative technologies that look at the plethora of issues associated with contaminated sediments, from management, risk characterization, remediation, monitoring, and we're looking at sediments that are contaminated with some of the traditional contaminants we deal with on DoD sites, such as PAHs, PCBs, heavy metals, and most sites contain some mixtures of these. In August of 2016, we also held a workshop, a strategic workshop on this topic. The link for the summary report that was released from this workshop is embedded within the topic area, and so I definitely encourage you to take a look at that workshop report so you can be a little more familiar with some of the data gaps and research needs that were identified
during that workshop, because that is certainly how we're targeting our investments over the next few years. The next slide is on another environmental restoration topic area on management of contaminated groundwater. Contaminated groundwater is one of the largest liabilities that the DoD has, and so what we've really been focusing on is reducing our cost to complete on the contaminated groundwater cleanups. And what that means is that we're dealing with our most challenging groundwater sites. These tend to be our source zones, ones that are in complex geological environments, ones that are dealing with emerging contaminants such as the per and polyfluorinated alkyl substances that we're really looking at now, as well as other emerging contaminants such as 1,4-dioxane. And we're really looking for developing better management techniques or technologies for treatment of these challenging sites, as well as developing better ways to optimize, assess, or monitor these different sites. Our next two topic areas fall under the Munitions Response program area, so I'm going to turn this over to Herb to talk about these in a little more detail.
Okay, these are both focused on military munitions in the underwater environment. We are looking to demonstrate technologies that, in broad sense, can detect, classify, and definitely emphasis on remediate military munitions found at underwater sites. As you see, we really look at this in three ways. On the second bullet, wide area surveys at first to identify areas of contamination, and then detailed survey techniques to find individual munitions if that's of interest. We're always looking for cost-effective recovery and disposal methods, which are at a premium, and then technologies and/or modeling that help the Department of Defense manage underwater munition sites. So you can see many of our sites are in ponds, lakes, rivers, estuaries, although most of them are coastal. Munitions of interest range very broadly from very small projectiles to very large bombs. It's not likely that any technology can span that whole range, and it's not required that they do. Formally, we are interested in depths up to 35 meters, but in fact, most of the effort and most of the DoD concern is in depths less than 5 meters.
Okay.
So sorry, we're switching back here.
The next topic area falls under resource conservation and resiliency, and it is on the use of unmanned aerial vehicles for safe and cost-effective natural resources management on the DoD lands. The topic area is very specific and lists several parameters that you really need to look at for demonstrating and validating these systems, and very specifically also, please note that ESTCP is not interested in funding projects that develop specific hardware capabilities of these UAV systems. Now, our next two topic areas are under the Weapons Systems and Platforms program area. The first one is on demonstration and validation of alternatives to hexavalent chromium in manufacturing and maintenance of weapons systems. And in this topic area, there are a number of requirements that you need to consider. What we'd like is that alternative technologies that are proposed should already be developed to at least a TRL of 4, and the proposed project should be able to bring it up to, or the goal should be to bring it up to a TRL 7 or higher. Also, the technology must provide equivalent or better corrosion protection and performance, and production level materials rather than laboratory batch level samples are preferred. The project should include field testing or accelerated aging of the coded items, and we do need at least one DoD organization involved as a funded co-performer so that we have a stakeholder involved and they can assist with the intended application of the technology. Our next topic area under this program area is the waste to energy converters for overseas contingency operations, and what we're looking for is a demonstration of technologies for efficient on-site destruction of the non-hazardous mixed solid waste that are produced during overseas contingency operations. And as with the former topic area, we have a number of items that must be met with these proposed technologies. One is we're looking for the production of an exportable useful fuel, electricity, or heated water. technologies must be self-powered or at least a net energy neutral operation. And we want a minimization of the demand for external liquid fuels or other energy inputs relative to conventional incineration. We also want to see that the residual waste volume can be reduced greater than 95% after processing. And we also still have a number of requirements that we want the proposed technologies to be capable of operating worldwide in our deployment systems and under climatic conditions. We prefer that they be automated so that we can minimize human labor. We don't want the technologies to require any unique skills or equipment instead in order to operate them or install or repair. And they need to comply with applicable EPA system design or operational requirements. Okay, now our next topic areas are within under the Department of Defense call, and we have a specific call under each of the program areas. The first one is under environmental restoration, and under here we have 6 different areas that we'd like the DoD to consider. They're under monitoring, reduction in the cost to complete, reducing source loading of munitions constituents, stormwater treatment, wastewater treatment, and again, the innovative technology transfer approaches. And I'm specifically have called out the technology transfer approaches because I do want to make sure that the DoD organizations are aware of what the call is under the BAA topic area, and please feel free to submit to that also. Each of the topic areas under the DoD for each program area has directed you to also look at that tech transfer topic area. I'd also like to point out under the environmental restoration call is, again, the workshop we had in the summer on contaminated sediments is very relevant here, so please take a look at that workshop report. It discusses not only contaminated sediments, but also stormwater issues in terms of how they impact contaminated sediments. That's relevant in both areas. Our next DoD topic area is under Munitions Response in the underwater environment, and this is covering, again, the same topics that were covered under the BAA. And again, a note to please look at the tech transfer topic area. Our next topic area under the DoD is for resource conservation and resiliency. And we have 2 subtopics here, one under natural resources, where we're looking for technologies for the sustainable management of natural resources under both the ecological systems, living marine resources ecology and management, as well as species ecology and management. And then more broadly, we're also looking for demonstrations and technologies that deal with air quality, specifically for active management of fire emissions. As with the other topic areas we're talking about, we specifically are directing you back to the tech transfer, but also under resource conservation, please take a look at the topic area that was released under use of unmanned aerial vehicles. We'd also like the DoD to address that topic area if you have a technology that would fit. And then the final topic area is under weapons system and platforms. We have 4 subtopics there under manufacturing and maintenance, green energetics, waste reduction, and lead-free electronics, and of course, as with all the others, directing you back to the tech transfer approach. So at this time, that concludes our webinar. You can go to our website to get any information about the program you may need, in terms, as well, of course, about the solicitation. But at this point, we will turn it open to questions.
Thank you, Andrea. We have had a number of questions. We will answer as many questions as time permits, focusing on those that are generally applicable to all submitters or logistical in nature. Please note that we will not be able to answer questions about specific proposal ideas or technologies during this webinar. What are typical funding levels for ESTCP demonstration projects?
I'd have to say we don't have a typical funding level. What we really recommend is that you propose the budget you need to conduct the technical objectives and meet the performance criteria for the project you propose. Having said that, projects may run anywhere from 200,000 to 400,000 per year, and may last an average of 3 years, but that range can vary widely.
Okay. Can a non-DoD organization participate on a proposal responding to the DoD call for proposals?
So the answer to the narrow question is yes, but I'm going to answer this much more broadly to hit a couple of questions that have come in. So I used the phrase in my presentation that responding to DoD call for proposals required a DoD lead. So by that I meant that the principal investigator and the main contact on the proposal has to be a DoD employee. So that's how that works. But it's completely usual for a team to be put together for even in the private sector and or DoD and the private sector, where the principal investigator would be a DoD person and several of the team members may be private sector organization. So that's not a bit of a problem. There's also been a question about the difference between the two calls. And someone asked, is this really, we have two programs here going something. What you will have noticed is that in general, the BAA calls are more narrowly targeted, and the DoD call is a superset of those. So as you look at that, I think that will become clear to you.
Is cost sharing a requirement for ESTCP projects?
It is not a requirement. We expect investigators to propose the team that makes the most sense for the technology they wish to demonstrate.
Can foreign organizations submit proposals to ESTCP?
Absolutely. It is not at all unusual for us to fund a foreign organization. In general, though, we would prefer to have the demonstration done on a base in the continental United States. That's mostly for logistical reasons to hold down the cost, but that is our preference.
Can a DoD organization submit a proposal that responds to a BAA topic?
Typically, the BAA topics are more narrowly defined than the DoD topics, so I would say that any of the BAA topics would certainly fall under the much more broad DoD topics. So in a sense, yes, you can, but you should still need to identify yourself as a DoD organization and submit in that way.
Can technologies proposed for the technology transfer topic originate from an SBIR program?
So I think the answer to that is yes. They could have originated from an SBIR program, but we are mostly fulfilling our mission to transition technologies that we've been involved in. So I think if there's been no CERTA or ESTCP participation, then that's probably not going to be looked at very favorably.
Does a demonstration site need to be identified in the pre-proposal?
It is not required that a demonstration site is identified at that time. Particularly if you're outside the DoD, we do recognize that it can be challenging to identify a site. So after the pre-proposal, if you are selected to submit a full proposal, we will assign you a DoD liaison who is there to assist you with identifying sites.
Will an engineer or technician be assigned to this project that will serve as a liaison with the military?
So we normally don't make a requirement that it explicitly be an engineer or technician. In general, the liaison for each project is a member of the ESTCP technical committee, most of whom are engineers or technicians. I think we would have to work that out in a particular case after a full proposal had been requested if there was a particular technological expertise that was required.
Can proposals submitted in previous years but not funded be submitted again this year?
You can certainly submit a proposal again as long as it is still relevant to the topic areas that we have released. It should still also be submitted as a pre-proposal initially. You have to follow that process where you submit the pre-proposal first and then you only submit a full proposal upon request.
To what degree will the PI have control over what gets printed for public record about the work being done?
We presume that all technologies being demonstrated in ESTCP are accessible by the public. That is obviously not completely always the case in the sense of technologies that are involved in the DoD industrial processes, refinishing, rework processes. But in general, these will be cleared for our website for public release.
What is meant by a DoD lead in the context of the DoD call for proposals?
DoD lead would simply be the person from the DoD organization who's taking the lead for submitting the proposal and also for managing the project if it were awarded. It does not necessarily mean that that person would be the one who is doing all of the technical work by themselves. It just means that's the person who we expect to be managing the project.
Is there an awardee match portion? How much of the project does the submitting organization have to fund themselves?
So there is no guidance on this in a hard and fast sense. Many projects are funded that are only ESTCP funded, but a number are funded in which the performing organization and or the DoD installation also contribute to the support of the demonstration. So I think that's a case-by-case thing. Of course, it's always a good thing to have some match.
Will there be a solicitation for ESTCP installation energy proposals this year?
We will be releasing that solicitation sometime in early February, so please keep an eye out for that, or if you are on our listserv, that will go out as soon as it's released.
For the BAA, is a small business participation required if proposals are less than $700K?
So I think the question is confusing the $700K, which is the threshold for a small business plan, with small business participation in general. One of the evaluation criteria in the BAA is small business participation, no matter the size of the proposal. Above $700,000, then a small business participation plan is required by the contracting branch.
What should be done if an idea covers more than one topic area?
You're going to have to choose, and I would suggest you choose the topic area under which it's most relevant and make sure that it meets the requirements of the topic area, but you will need to choose for the purposes of our solicitation.
Is there a format or template that the pre-proposal must conform to? Any details on what will need to include?
Yes. So if you go to our website and look under the details for you, the particular DoD or non-DoD details, there is a how to submit, and it lists the 7 or 8 or 11, I don't remember how many it is, required elements. And so please do those. We definitely need to have a title, a performing organization, but it lays out the sections that you have to complete. And if you remember from the slide I told you earlier about this evaluation factors, the sections just mirror those so that you are laying out how we decide.
Can the work being done on the base be used externally for marketing efforts, or must it all be kept secure? Are visitors allowed to see systems that are set up and running upon validation?
Well, I'll answer that in 2 parts. In terms of using the work being done for marketing, or must it be kept secure, the answer is not necessarily. In terms of it needing to be kept secure, generally we like the information that's being developed to get out there to the public. So most of the time that's all right to use that information. There may be situations where, depending on the type of work you're doing, where the host organization may, there may be some secure issues, but most of the time it's fine. In terms of allowing visitors to see the systems, typically that is also all right. That would have to be organized with the host installation. They have requirements about who is allowed on base and sometimes into which sections of the base. So that would just have to be organized with the host installation.
Are letters of support from DoD facilities required or encouraged?
So they are not required, but I think it might not be a bad idea in some cases. So there are often times where people are trying to decide whether this particular demonstration can be successful, and if you've had pre-arrangements with the DoD installation that they're happy to host it, that clearly goes towards success, likely success of the demonstration. In other cases, it may be completely obvious where it's going to be, and they may not be required. It may not be of any particular value. So I would say not required, not encouraged, but looked at.
Could you please explain the difference between the BAA and DoD topics? Are these two different opportunities?
The difference in the topics is really depending on the organization at which you work. So if you do not work for the DoD, you should be addressing the BAA topic areas. If you work for the DoD, and again, this is whoever takes the lead on the proposal, if you work for the DoD, then you need to be looking at the DoD topics. Now, the composition of your team can include people from both the private sector as well as the DoD, as well as a federal organization outside the DoD. It depends on who is taking the lead on the proposal in terms of whether you address the BAA or the DoD topics.
Okay, this is a two-part question. Can a company submit proposals to more than one topic as well as multiple proposals to the same topic? And is there a limit on the number of proposals that they can submit?
So the answer in general to that question is yes. A company can submit proposals to more than one topic. Certainly that's yes. And a company can submit multiple proposals to the same topic. The secondary question is there a limit to the number that can be submitted? While there's no formal limit, you get 16 chances or you get 8 chances or whatever, you have to really think this through. The people that are doing the evaluation are people. And when they get to the 22nd proposal from the same proposer, they're going to get pretty tired of reading them. So I wouldn't really be thinking about trying to spam us.
Is there a source to view previously funded ESTCP projects in resource conservation or any other program area?
Yes, if you go to our website, you can find under news, you will find a list of all the projects we funded, for example, under FY17, and that will list the New Start projects. But you can also go to each individual program area page. There is one, for example, on resource conservation and resiliency. And from there, you can look at the different areas, and you can get lists of projects funded under certain areas. You can also do a search of the entire website for particular keywords if you're looking at a particular technology that you're going to implement.
Is a DoD lead required for the BAA proposal?
So the answer to that is no, and I think that maybe creates a slight misunderstanding of what we mean by the two. A DoD lead is required for the call for DoD proposals. DoD people may participate in a private sector proposal that's submitted to the BAA or may not. Some of them are teams that include DoD people, some of them are teams that do not.
Can people from foreign nations or foreign nationals within the United States be part of a proposal?
Yes, we don't have any restrictions on that, and we have funded organizations outside the United States.
Can a private entity submit to the BAA and also work with a DoD organization to submit to DoD Call for the same idea or synergistic ideas?
Well, that's a little bit of a variant of what we've done before. I don't know that there would be any value to submit for the same idea into two calls. I think everyone will recognize that pretty quickly and only think of it as one idea. A synergistic idea, I think that could work. If there were two parts of a problem that really were independent demonstrations, I don't think anybody would have any problem with that.
This is the last more general question that we have received. There are other questions which are more specific to a topic area or technology. For those questions, we ask that you contact the program manager for that specific topic. Thank you for attending the webinar today. As a reminder, the presentation and audio will be archived for future reference on the ESTCP Solicitation webpage. This concludes today's webcast.